Hello and welcome back to the channel. Today I wanted to talk about different shoes for use with running and working out, because I've known a few people that use the same shoes when they're working out at the gym and when they're running, and I've had to tell them from my own experience with shoes that you really need to have different pairs of shoes for each occasion. Kind of sounds silly, I know, but depending on the pair of shoe that you have, it's designed for different things. So, for instance, running shoes are designed totally differently from like cross trainers, which you'd use at the gym, or like say basketball or tennis shoes. They're made specifically to support the foot in the running motion. So if you buy a pair of running shoes and then use them at the gym for weights or any other sort of workout, you're going to end up wearing the shoes in a weird way. They're designed for a specific motion, so with weight training, strength training, all that, you're moving your body in a totally different way from the way you do when you run. So it would make the shoes almost break apart because they're not being used the way they were intended to. So shoes are very touchy, because our feet are touchy. I'll put it that way. Because, like for instance, I have very, very flat feet. So I need to be very careful with the shoes that I wear and with the orthotic inserts I use in my shoes. I've got two different pairs of orthotics, one from my chiropractor that I use for just every day, and then a pair that I got from a sneaker store. It's called The Sneaker Store out here near where I live, and they had a machine where they scanned my feet and had me walk along pads so that they could see what my feet musculature and everything is, and what my feet would best respond to. And then they sent those scans to a company called Superfeet that do orthotic inserts in shoes, so that they could make the right pair of inserts for me for running. There's also Sneaker Store. I don't know if they're a chain or not. That's the only thing. I know they have a website, but it might just be because of the fact that they're a store here in the area, so they made a website. I don't know. But Fleet Feet is another chain store. You find them in a lot of different places around the country, and they're really good. They do the same sort of thing. They scan your feet, look your feet over to decide what kind of shoe is best for you, and then they watch how you move around to see where you need support. So, a few years ago, I had run, back in 2016, I had run my first Boilermaker 15K in a pair of Skechers Go Runs that I'd had for years, that I was using just for walking, but I couldn't wear them very often because of the bump in the center of the shoe was bumping up into the flatness of my foot. But I got them thinking that they would help me find how my feet were supposed to move properly because that was kind of the original thing with Skechers Go Runs. You had the bump so that you knew this is where your foot is supposed to land when you're running. So I thought, okay, that'd be cool to have for, just walking around. With my job, I stand a lot, so wearing those to work, I felt like my feet were going to snap in half because of that bump, so I stopped wearing them very often. I'd wear them when I'd go out for a walk, but otherwise I wouldn't. And then I got into running, and they were the one shoe that I knew was a running shoe, so I used them a lot. And it got to a point where they were pretty much falling apart because I'd had them for several years and never did anything with them. Or when I did do stuff with them, I just walked and walked and walked for miles. And then I started running and they kind of wore down and kind of started falling apart on me. So, what I ended up doing, I found another more updated pair of Skechers Go Runs that worked really well. Used them all the time. I'd walk in them, I'd run in them, I'd run races in them. And the last race I used them for was the Boilermaker 15K, and this was my second time running it. I'd gotten so that my speed was a lot faster, but I was still in the last corral, mixed in with all the people that more or less walk or run very slowly, or are in groups and just kind of spread all the way across the road. So I was dodging around people because I could run faster than that. So I was dodging around, and a few days later I thought, I've done a half marathon. At that point I'd done 2 half marathons. I'd done the Boilermaker again. I think I'd done a 5K. So I was like, I can do anything. So and this was July, I went out and ran, and then I got done and was like, man, at that point I realized that I sometimes got shin splints. That was partly why I ended up getting orthotic inserts from my chiropractor in the first place. So, anyway, I was running, and I found that the shin splints were getting worse. So I did a little research, found out running shoes generally don't last longer than 500 miles. That was news to me, and I hadn't, of course, been keeping track of my shoes at that point, so I figured I used them for walking around a lot, I used them for running a lot, I used them for racing a lot, and I was doing Run the Year that year. That was my first time doing the Run the Year challenge, so by that point I'd clocked in hundreds of miles. So I was like, well, I'm pretty sure these shoes have lived out their life, basically. So that's when I found out from my chiropractor, look into Fleet Feet. So I went to them, because then I was just buying shoes online and at Dick's Sporting Goods and all these different places, trying to find a number of different shoes to use to switch out, because I thought, better to have a number of pairs to switch out so that they last longer, as opposed to having to replace the same pair of shoes every few months. So I tried out some more shoes, and the shin splints kept getting worse because, of course, by that point my shin splints were bad, and it was just they couldn't recover from it. So, but he sent me to Fleet Feet. They set me up with good stabilizing shoes, because I have flat feet and I tend to pronate a lot with my feet when I walk. So they found very supportive shoes for me. So some of those shoes are the shoes that I use when I race now. I do have some neutral shoes. That's ones that don't have a lot of stability to them. They're more for people who don't really need the stability, or for people for racing, because the thing with stability shoes is they're very heavy. So they can kind of weigh you down, slow you down in that regard. So I do have some neutral shoes that I use for racing, because I also decided from different things I read, sometimes it's better to kind of alternate types of shoes, so that you can strengthen the muscles that are weak. And then, of course, do exercises to strengthen them as well. But anyway, my main point with all this was to just put it out there. Number one, if you're going to do a lot of things, weight training, strength training, cross training, running, have a shoe for each occasion. I'm not kidding. If you use your running shoes for weight training, I mean, you could luck out and be fine, but 2, you could end up injuring yourself, and you don't want that. And 2, try to find a way to keep track of your shoe's life. Make sure that after about 500 miles, you say, okay, we're retiring these shoes. I've had a few times where I haven't quite gotten to 500 miles and still was like, these need to go. So just keep, all that stuff in mind so you don't injure yourself. It's very important not to hurt yourself, especially your feet, because your feet are very sensitive with a lot of different things. So, yeah, and I highly recommend, if there's a Fleet Feet in your area and you're a runner or anything, check them out. They can get you fitted up with the right shoe for you. And I've even heard that Brooks has spoken about doing something with Superfeet. That's the company that does the inserts, where you can get your feet scanned and then get a custom shoe made specifically for your feet. So, like, never mind, the clerk at the store saying, oh, I think this pair would work for you. No, these would be made specifically for your feet. They'd fit you just right. They would support you the way you need. You wouldn't need the inserts because it would be made for the bottoms of your feet. So, definitely look into Brooks. And Brooks is a great running shoe company anyway. I've loved every pair of shoe I've ever owned by Brooks, and they've all treated me very well. So, yeah. So, that's it. Thank you for watching. Remember, we're in it for the long run. Peace and love.